Do you ever wonder if the monsters we hear about in horror stories might actually be real? Monsters have been a staple of folklore and modern culture for centuries. From the terrifying creatures of ancient myth to the modern-day boogeymen that haunt our nightmares, monsters have always fascinated and frightened us. But what if I told you that some of these monsters might be more than just figments of our imagination? Today, we're going to explore two horrifying stories that blur the line between myth and reality. These stories will take you on a journey to the darker side of human experience, where the boundaries between what's real and what's not are constantly blurred. So, if you're ready to confront the unknown and face the possibility that monsters might be lurking in the shadows, then let's dive in. As we delve into these terrifying tales, you'll be forced to question what you thought you knew about the nature of monsters. Are they purely fictional creatures designed to entertain and frighten us, or are they based on some semblance of truth? Whatever the answer may be, one thing is certain. These stories will leave you sleeping with the lights on tonight. But there's a twist. One of these stories is true, a story based on reality, whilst the other is a mere myth and totally made up by ourselves. But which is which? Can you tell? Find out at the end. So with that said, let's get started and explore the first of our two horror stories. Story 1. Shadows on Bray Road. On the edge of Elkhorn, Wisconsin, lies a stretch of rural road cloaked in the shadows of towering, dense forests, a place where the veil between the known and the unknown is unnervingly thin. Bray Road, as the locals call it, has been the setting of whispers and warnings for decades. This is the tale of what happened one autumn when the leaves turned to fire and the nights grew longer, pulling with them a chilling presence from the depths of local legend. In the fall of 1994, Alex, a senior at Elkhorn Area High School, was known among his peers for his love of hunting and his skeptical nature. Stories of ghosts and ghouls never seemed to shake him, but the recurring tales of the Bray Road Beast, a creature said to be part werewolf and part man, often shared around campfires, were met with his firm disbelief. Eyewitness hysteria, he'd call it, even as his friends swore they'd seen or known someone who had encountered the beast. As the Halloween season approached, Alex's friend, Jenna, dared him to prove there was nothing out there. Armed with a camera, a flashlight, and a mix of bravado and skepticism, Alex set out one evening with Jenna and his younger brother, Tommy, to debunk the legend once and for all. The trio drove down the winding, fog-laden Bray Road, the headlights of Alex's old pickup truck barely cutting through the dense white mist. "It's just a road," Alex reassured Tommy, who clutched his flashlight like a lifeline. Jenna, on the other hand, kept her eyes glued to the window, half hoping, half dreading to catch a glimpse of something extraordinary. They parked near the Densmore Forest entrance, a known hotspot for sightings. The air was crisp, and the rustling of the autumn leaves underfoot sounded like whispers. As they ventured deeper into the woods, the playful banter died down, replaced by a heavy silence broken only by the occasional distant howl of a coyote, or so they hoped. Alex led the way, scanning the underbrush with his flashlight, while Jenna used her camera to document their venture. Tommy stayed close, jumping at every snap of a twig. "It's probably just a deer," Alex muttered, though his voice lacked conviction as the night wore on and the forest seemed to close in around them. Suddenly, Tommy froze. "Did you guys hear that?" he whispered, his voice trembling. Before Alex could respond, a low growl echoed through the trees, sending a shiver down their spines. Jenna's camera swung around wildly as she tried to capture whatever lurked in the darkness. "There's something out there," she hissed, her earlier excitement turning to fear. The growl grew into a snarl, and the bushes ahead of them rustled violently. Alex, heart pounding, aimed his flashlight towards the movement. The light caught two gleaming, amber eyes set high above the ground. The creature that stepped into the light was unlike anything Alex had ever seen. It was massive, with shaggy, gray fur and a snout that sniffed the air with apparent disdain. Its lips curled back to reveal sharp, glistening teeth as it growled once more. Frozen in fear, the trio watched as the creature, standing on its hind legs like a man but built like a bear, stared back at them. Alex's skepticism shattered as the beast's gaze met his, a mix of human intelligence and animalistic malice in its eyes. Without a word, he grabbed Tommy and Jenna, urging them to run. They dashed through the woods, the sound of heavy footsteps thundering behind them. Branches snagged their clothes, roots threatened to trip them, but fear propelled them forward. They burst onto the road, scrambled into the truck, and Alex gunned the engine as the creature emerged from the treeline. As they sped away, Jenna turned to catch one last glimpse of the beast. It stood in the middle of the road, watching them retreat into the night, a haunting silhouette that would forever be etched in their minds. Back in town, their story was met with a mix of skepticism and knowing looks. Old-timers nodded solemnly, while skeptics like Alex had been before scoffed. But the truth of what they saw that night on Bray Road changed them forever. Alex never mocked the tales again, and his camera, which had fallen in the escape, was never recovered, leaving their encounter unproven but seared into their memories as the most terrifying night of their lives. As autumn returns each year, bringing with it the long shadows of dusk, the people of Elkhorn keep a watchful eye on the woods surrounding Bray Road. And for those who've seen what lurks there, the line between legend and reality has irrevocably blurred. Moving on to our second horror story, we're going to explore a tale that's just as terrifying, but this time, it's completely fictional. Or is it? The horror in this story comes from the recognition that the most terrifying monsters can be found within the human psyche itself. Story 2. The Experiment, by Dr. Evelyn Blackwood, Ph.D., Department of Psychology, Rutgers University. July 1, 2023. It began as an academic exercise, a simple thought experiment designed to push the boundaries of human psychology and our understanding of the darker impulses that lurk within the human mind. Little did I know that it would spiral into a nightmare of unimaginable proportions. The premise was simple enough. Could we create conditions that would bring out the worst in people, that would strip away the veneer of civility and expose the true, unrestrained savagery that lies dormant in all of us? It was an idea that had been explored before, of course, in experiments like Milgram's obedience studies and Zimbardo's infamous Stanford prison experiment. But I believed that I could take it further, delve deeper into the abyss of human nature. And so, with the approval of my university's ethics board and the backing of a generous grant, I set out to design the ultimate test of the human psyche. I recruited a group of 50 individuals, carefully selected to represent a cross-section of society, from successful business people to blue-collar workers, from college students to retirees. They were promised a substantial financial reward for their participation, and I assured them that their safety and well-being would be my top priority. The experiment took place in a specially constructed facility, a self-contained environment designed to isolate the participants from the outside world. The space was divided into two sections, a civilized area with all the comforts of home, and a primal zone, a stark and barren space meant to evoke a sense of deprivation and unease. For the first few days, the participants were encouraged to settle into their new surroundings, to acclimate themselves to the rhythms and routines of the experiment. They were provided with ample food, water, and other basic necessities, and they were allowed to interact freely with one another. But then, slowly and subtly, the conditions began to change. The food supplies dwindled, the water became scarce, and the civilized areas were gradually made less comfortable. The participants were forced to compete for the dwindling resources, to fight for their share of the basic necessities. And as the situation deteriorated, something extraordinary began to happen. The veneer of civility that had once bound the group together began to crack, revealing the raw, primal instincts that lurked beneath the surface. At first, it was small things, bickering, hoarding, the occasional act of petty theft. But as the scarcity of resources increased, the participants became increasingly desperate, resorting to more and more extreme measures to ensure their own survival. Alliances were formed and broken, trust was betrayed, and violence became the currency of the day. I watched in horror as my subjects turned on one another, descending into a brutal, Darwinian struggle for survival. And then the unthinkable happened. One of the participants, a mild-mannered accountant named Robert, suddenly snapped. In a fit of rage and desperation, he attacked another participant, savagely beating the man to death with his bare hands. The other participants, already on the brink of madness, reacted with a mix of terror and fascination. Some tried to stop Robert, but others simply watched, transfixed by the primal brutality of the act. In the aftermath of the killing, the participants descended into a state of complete and utter chaos. They turned on one another with a ferocity that I could never have imagined, tearing each other apart with their bare hands, their faces contorted with rage and fear. I tried to intervene, to restore order, but my pleas fell on deaf ears. The participants had become like wild animals, driven by nothing more than the basest of instincts. They were beyond reason, beyond control. In the end, only a handful of the original participants survived the ordeal, their minds shattered, their souls irrevocably scarred. And I, the one who had orchestrated this nightmarish experiment, was left to grapple with the weight of my own guilt and the realization that I had unleashed a darkness within the human psyche that I could never have imagined. To this day, I am haunted by the memory of that fateful experiment, the way in which it laid bare the fragility of our so-called civilized nature. I have spent countless hours agonizing over the ethical implications of my actions, the lives that were destroyed by my quest for knowledge. And I often wonder, in the quiet moments of the night, whether the true monster in this story was me. As we conclude our journey into the world of monsters, we're left with more questions than answers. Are monsters real, or are they just a product of our imagination? Do they lurk in the shadows, waiting to pounce, or are they simply a manifestation of our deepest fears and anxieties? Whatever the answer may be, one thing is certain: monsters have the power to captivate and terrify us, and they will continue to haunt our nightmares for generations to come. And as for the big reveal, yes, monsters are real. The first story, The Shadows on Bray Road, is true, a reality, and based on fact. The second story is not, and is totally unreal and made up. I'm sure I fooled most of you. Let me know. So, what do you think? Do you believe that monsters might be more than just figments of our imagination? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to check out our other videos on horror and mythology. If you're new to our channel, consider subscribing for more content on the darker side of human nature. And if you're feeling generous, hit that like button and share this video with your friends. Thanks for watching, and until next time, good night.